So I've had the Lagom Mini for about 6 months now, and in that period of time, I've really fallen in love with things that I originally reviewed and thought were great, and I've also realized things that maybe I didn't in the original review. Today I also want to talk about the updates for this grinder. There's been a couple changes, and also an updated burr. This is the 48mm obsidian burr, and in this unit there's a brand new Moonshine Burr that is very exciting. So we'll talk more about that as well. And by the end of today's video, hopefully you have just a little bit better understanding if this is still a grinder that you should consider. Welcome back to the channel, friends. My name's Kyle, and today I'm so excited that you clicked on this video. Like, truly, I am so grateful for each one of you. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you could do me a huge favor before we dive into this, just scroll down and hit that thumbs up down below. It's a huge way to support this channel, support coffee on YouTube. It would mean the world. So let's talk about this. For those who aren't aware, let's bring you up to speed about the Lagom Mini. I'll put some timestamps down below if you want to just skip this part. The Lagom Mini is a compact electric coffee grinder. Now it comes in two different burr options, a 38mm burr and a 48mm burr. Now this unit I have here is the 48mm burr. Now this grinder works by just simply turning on a button, and it grinds with its 48mm burrs inside. This has a small hopper. It's about 20-25 grams, and it grinds right through into the grind chamber. This has really great retention, or low retention, very little retention. And so you shouldn't have an issue of swapping between beans or changing grind sizes without having to purge coffee. That's not an issue. Not to mention, this thing is incredibly small. Putting this beside the Niche Zero, I mean, it's a no-brainer. This is a fairly compact grinder as is. But after 6 months, what should you know about this coffee grinder? Let's talk about that. But first, let's brew some coffee. Now, while I'm brewing this coffee, let me quickly tell you about today's sponsor, which is Third Wave Water. Now, Third Wave Water is a pack of minerals that you add to demineralized water or distilled water to ensure the best water possible for brewing coffee. Now, I know this sounds just absolutely geeky, maybe a little excessive, but guys, I'm telling you, this is essential for brewing the best coffee at home. And that's because coffee is 98% water. So depending on what's in your water, it can have a direct impact on the flavor. And you may not even realize this. So I would recommend checking out Third Wave Water, trying a product like this, because this might be the biggest catalyst for you brewing the best coffee of your life. I got you covered. If you want to check out Third Wave Water, use the link in the top of the description. I truly believe in this product. I've been using it for years. It's in my espresso machines because they have an espresso profile. I use this for filter coffee every single day, and I wouldn't use anything but it. So go check it out. Third Wave Water is amazing, and thank you so much for sponsoring this video. Oh, I really enjoy this coffee. Honestly, the grinder has never produced a terrible cup for me. It's really great, and honestly, it reminds me a lot of that Commandante C40 hand grinder. And for those who aren't aware, that's this coffee grinder right here. This is the Commandante, and it's a premium hand grinder, one of my personal favorite hand grinders in the world. We'll talk about why it's very similar to this later in this video, so be sure to stick around for that, because it's gonna have a lot to do with its burr set and its newer updated burr. But if we're talking pros and cons and what I love, let's dive right into this. I love the coffee it produces. There's no issues there. I've never had an issue with the coffee it produces. It's fantastic, it's delicious. For filter coffee, it's great. For espresso, it produces great shots. I prefer them over the Niche Zero for this extra clarity. It lacks the fines that the Niche produces, so depending on if you like darker roasts or more classic style of espressos, you might prefer something like the Niche. But if not, if you like a little bit more modern style espresso while still having the attributes of complexity and sweetness that a conical burr gives you, then this is a great grinder for that. Some other things I love about this grinder is that stepless adjustment system. It really is something to be appreciated and recognized, because not enough grinders have this stepless adjustment system, in my opinion, and if they do, they're not quite as nice and easy to use as this one. For me, dialing in a coffee is incredibly easy. I know that roughly 1.1 turns from the 0 point to 1.4 turns is a perfect spot for filter coffee, depending on the coffee. And for espresso, it's 0.6 turns to 0.9 turns. Anywhere in there is a sweet spot. And honestly, it's just really easy to dial in. I have to say that it's very compact. It's very nice. It's very small. I love its design. You know, Option O and Hayden create beautiful grinders. They're very simplistic. I've always said they look very Apple-esque. There's a Mac Studio and there's a Lagom Mini. Like they're two peas in a pod. I love this magnetic chamber. I thought it might annoy me over time, but after 6 months, it's actually been fantastic. I prefer this over something like the Fellow Ode. I find that this one just does what it should a little bit more. It's got very strong magnets. It clicks in place, it's satisfying. The retention's never been an issue. Overall, my experience has been great. The lid's great. I did take out that anti-popcorning plastic 3D printed part because I thought that was silly. I truly don't have any issues with its design overall. But let's talk about some cons, right? Because you know I love this grinder. I've talked about it many times on this channel, but you want to know why you shouldn't buy this. Here's some issues. I really got to address that this motor is not meant to grind kilos of coffee a day. Right? Most home grinders aren't, but especially this one. This truly is a motorized hand grinder in many ways, and that's not a bad thing. Right? As long as you know that you're only going to be grinding 3-5 cups max a day, maybe a little bit more than that, this will be fine. You know, it'll be fine. But if you're grinding loads of coffee, you should take some caution. This isn't a motor that's meant to fight big batches of coffee. It's just not. Nor is it designed to, right? It's got a little tiny hopper in the top. That would just be annoying to use. And then we should talk about espresso. Now, for me, I've actually had no issues in grinding for espresso. Now, I don't do it daily. But let's talk about stalling, because this has been a very interesting topic on the internet around this grinder and grinders like it, like the SPT K38G. And this grinder, for me, from my personal experience, has never stalled. And I've tried so hard. I've tried the lightest roast I can find. I've tried the darkest roast. I've tried everything in between. Obviously, lighter roasts are more dense. They're gonna have a more impact on how much the motor's gonna have to work, right? But some of my friends have had stalled grinders. I know, talking to even other YouTubers, they have had experiences where their grinders have stalled. And it's put me in this very isolated experience, because no matter what I do, no matter how fine I grind, my grinder seems to be the chosen one.
You were the chosen one!
So I did reach out to Optional because I was very confused on this topic, and we've been dialoguing for a while on and off. And they mentioned that they've addressed this topic, that it was only a limited batch issue and it had a lot to do with its power supply. Now, from what they explained to me, the issue was that the power supply, they used a different batch and those power supplies had a different limiter. So based on the resistance that the burrs were facing, that limiter would shut off the grinder, basically preventing it from dying, right? Just damaging itself, which is a good thing, but not when you want to grind coffee and it's stalling every couple seconds and you have to slow feed the grinder. From what I understand, Optional has addressed this and their new units will not have this issue, but you should be aware of that. And then speaking of the power supply, again, my unit here has this big old block on the end, which I find very inconvenient. In my brew bar, I have it close to the wall and I have a power bar attached to the back with some wire management. And this doesn't allow me to get close to the wall. Having this power brick at the plug is just a little annoying for me. And then the one other thing that I've really come to recognize over using this for a long time is its lack of stability in its base. Now, it's not gonna tip over this way or this way unless you knock it. But what I don't find fun is when I try to activate the switch, it can be a little light, and depending on my angle, it'll push the grinder along. So I would like to see, if Optional is watching this, something a little more grippy. They have a rubber on the bottom here, but it doesn't really do a great job. Something a little grippier, or maybe even just kind of lowering the center of gravity somehow, maybe putting a weight on the bottom so that this doesn't move as easy would be such a game changer for me. Small nitpick, but. And then we need to talk about the Moonshine Burrs. Originally, this was the burr inside the Optional Lagom Mini with the 48mm burr. It was their Obsidian burr. And why I love this burr so much is it reminds me a lot of my Comandante C40, which again is this hand grinder right here. And this grinder is fantastic because it really revolutionized a premium hand grinder market. And it had a burr called the Nitro Blade, which was a high nitrogen alloy stainless steel with a very unique geometry. Now, this geometry is very good at creating high clarity cups of filter coffee with great complexity and awesome sweetness. For me, it's one of my favorite burr designs for filter coffee, and this grinder just is a great joy to use. They're built in Germany. They're just a wonderful design. Now, I've always wanted an electric version because as much as I enjoy hand grinding time to time, it's not something I like to do daily. So when a grinder can come out with a very similar geometry to this and produce very similar results, I'm all for it. Now, this burr, as you can see, is very, very similar. This being the Obsidian and this being the Comandante C40. Now, when it comes to coating as a topic, this is for a full dedicated video because there's so much analysis and research that we need to go into to figure out really what are the differences in our cups of coffee. But if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments down below, because that would really help me understand if this is a video worth making because you'll watch it. So let me know down below. But the easiest way I can talk about what coating does versus non-coating is comparing it to something that I personally find as another enjoyable niche, and that is weightlifting and barbells. Now stick with me if you're not interested in this topic, I promise it might help. Now barbells are made of steel, just like burrs. Often weightlifters, depending on the sport that they're doing, want different coatings and different knurlings on the burr. Very similar to burr geometry and burr coating. Now when you're powerlifting, you want something that is very grippy and very aggressive because you don't want to let that bar slip out of your hands. So what people do is get bare steel bars and have a very aggressive knurling. But if you want to do something like a CrossFit, something a little bit less aggressive, where you're grabbing the bar, throwing it overhead, moving the bar around a little bit more, you want a less aggressive knurling with more coating. Now the coating is really there to protect the barbells, much like coating on burrs, that help prevent rusting, but also wear over time. But when it comes to burrs, this is very relative. With coating, even as I run my hand over this burr, there is a different level of grip than there is on the one with coating. With a very similar geometry, I can feel the difference just with my bare hand. So how much even more so if you were grinding coffee beans through this would this have on cutting up and breaking down that coffee bean? Now I've got to say, coating is a minimal difference, right? You're not going to have a completely different geometry style of distribution from coating versus non-coating, at least in my experience, but it's enough where you could consider, if you had the option between coating and non-coating, you might want to know which option you would want to go with. So why do I share all of this? Well, Option O has a brand new burr. This burr is called their Moonshine Burr. Now this burr is currently in beta testing, and I was lucky enough to be able to be one of the beta testers to give some feedback in this burr. And Option O has recently gone public saying that this burr is now going to be available for purchase. So by the time this video is out, you might be able to order this burr. So hopefully this helps in this decision. Now if I take this burr out, again, this is the Obsidian burr. This is the Comandante C40. And this Comandante C40, and this is the new Moonshine Burr. Now, it might be hard to tell on camera, but they are different, but they're very similar. Now, what's going on here is Option O is taking the exact same burr geometry. It's the exact same height, exact same width. These burrs are very similar, right? But what's going on here is it's not a lack of coating. They're using like a polish coating on these. And this is the Moonshine Burr. And this burr has fantastic results. I find that it's very similar to the C40 in ways that the Option O just fell short because it produced a little bit more fines on this Obsidian burr, probably because of that coating. With this one here, I find it's a little bit more in clarity. It's definitely a great sweetness. It's still the complexity you'd want from a conical burr that the C40 obviously highlights in. And honestly, if you're looking for a motorized grinder that is similar to the C40 for filter coffee, I think your best option other than motorizing the C40 would be to get the Lagom Mini with the Moonshine Burr. So far, my results have been fantastic in its cups, and honestly, its espresso is great too, higher clarity than you would find on this one here, depending on your preference. You may like that, you may not. Now, a few things to note here with this new burr. Talking to a few people in my Patreon community on our Discord, and one of them being a moderator, he said that this burr actually produced less fines and was having a harder time grinding the beans and had more stalling issues on the grinder. And so I tried to test this out, and I spent hours trying to stall my grinder, and I just couldn't do that. It's an experience that some people are experiencing. I can't speak to that though because my personal experience doesn't align with that. So I can't say for you to be worried about that, because I haven't experienced it, but I've heard it from other people. So take that with a grain of salt. So after 6 months of use, is the Lagom Mini a grinder I can recommend to all of you? Is this something you should consider if you're in the market for a filter coffee grinder that's compact, especially if you want a conical burr? My answer is yes. Understanding a few things. If you want this grinder for filter coffee, you want something similar to like the Comandante C40, or you just want a great filter coffee grinder that's compact and fairly affordable, obviously being more expensive than some other conical grinders on the market, but producing fantastic results, I can't recommend this enough. As a filter coffee grinder, it's nearly perfect for me in what I do in my daily usage, but that might vary for you. But if you're wanting an espresso grinder, and this is your main espresso grinder, I still feel a little iffy on recommending this grinder for you. It can brew espresso, it can grind for espresso, but I would say if you're somebody who maybe primarily does filter coffee and maybe some espressos occasionally with like a lever or something like that, then this is perfect, for me. That all being said, I love the Lagom Mini, and if you're in the market for a grinder, this should be a consideration if you're in that price range. I still think it's comparable to grinders like the Niche. I think it's very competitive, and now with the newer burr, I just love it. I think it's a fantastic grinder. I love the design. I love Option O. I've got no bias, but I'm definitely a fanboy. okay? I don't have any affiliation with Hayden and Optional, but I'm a fan. And the P100, we'll see. All right, let me know your thoughts down below. Do you like the Optional Lagom Mini? Is this a grinder that's missed the mark, or is it perfect for your needs? I want to know all your thoughts on the Moonshine Burr, the C40 Burr, and the Obsidian one. Which would you choose out of these two burrs? Would you choose the coating or the polished burr in the Moonshine? Are you going to be ordering the Moonshine if you have a Lagom Mini? Let me know all of that down below. I'll be reading every single comment. Also, if you haven't yet, please hit that like button down below. It's a huge way to support this channel. Subscribe for more on the Lagom Mini and all things coffee grinders, and we'll see you guys all in the next video. Have a wonderful day and brew something great today. Peace.